Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, and today we are finally doing it. After the videos on the plains were my first long project all those months ago, I'm actually sitting down and talking about an individual plane. I'd like to caution I can only do so many of these. Information on planes are scattered, and we only really have enough strong center to where I feel I can talk about 3 of them at this point. But either way, today we deal with the first of these planes, which is the first world, the realm of the Fae. Now, before we get started, I would like to point out that this is not working. So there's a lamp over here which is off balancing the light, but it's the best I can do at this point. I'm going to a new place soon anyway, so no use worrying about it. Either way, actual video. The first world gets named because it was the first attempt by the gods to make a world before the material plane was even in existence. The gods tested everything exhaustively, from the laws of physics to the original versions of every creature in existence. Every permutation was tested by the gods, warping the world again and again and again. Then, when they were done, left, with full knowledge of what they desired, so they could make their material plane. And so the first world was left godless. The people of the plane have never forgotten the great abandonment, and they tend to not be forgiving when forced to deal with those who left them behind. Originally, the first world overlapped with the material plane. However, the influence of the positive energy plane has caused us to shift relatively since the beginning of time. Not like one can usually tell. People do not really get a chance to stand outside the plane to see how they are positioned. Well, I guess the astral plane might give you a chance to see it, but I digress. What matters is the effect that becoming ever closer to the positive energy plane has. Being closer to where souls originate, and further from where they disintegrate, has many of the plane's beings created through excess life force. This means, as long as they die in the first world, they can usually just come back red as rain. This is one of the reasons many Fae do not stay on the material plane for long. It means going from a world with limitless lives to one where one little prank can cause someone a game over. Now let us look at some of the features of the first world. First on the mission on my part. Well, usually I go through maps of the region in some order. The first world is not a place of order. While the places associated with a specific planet tend to stay relatively together, the location is constantly shifting where they are, causing what were neighboring towns 1 second to suddenly be on opposite sides of sea and mountain. So, in other words, when I actually get through going through the first world, it's going to be a mess. The plane itself is also unstable. It was made by the gods to test the laws of the universe. Even without them, the plane continues to shift. There are, however, multiple ways to keep a feature in place. First, someone with powerful enough will can keep a place standing. Most famous of these kind of people are the semi-deities of the first world, the Eldest. But those below the station demigod, heck, even powerful enough artifacts, can keep an area stable. Another are what is known as breaches, tears between the first world and the material plane. Here, stability seeps in, keeping the area around the breach held in place until the portal is closed. Closing the portal being something many Fae groups do what they can to make it happen as soon as possible. 2 final notes. Magic and time are also unpredictable here. First, magic. because of the instability of the area's laws of nature, which cause spell which reacts to the rules which causes a spell which is designed for a different set of rules to instead react to the rules that it's being summoned into instead of what it's designed for, leading to sometimes unpredictable results. Time, on the other hand, means nothing to most Fae, and many who go to the First World will potentially find the unstable nature of the plane aging one person rapidly, while the person standing next to them has their age slowed to a crawl. Now let's briefly touch on some of the residents of the First World. First, the thing one is most likely to find in the First World is everything. Again, the First World is a place of prototypes. This is not just for physics, but biology. There are versions of every creature on the material plane there, but for every normal wolf, there is one with wings, one with gills, one with compound eyes, etc. It is when they get so crazy that they become something completely different from anything on the material plane that they become what is known as a Fae. A majority of the most famous creatures from the First World are either Fae or some kind of plant-based creature. We will be going into specifics of some as I go on, but those are for later. That said, there is one non-Fae First World creature that I would like to mention, partially because of recent information. The Norms are originally not from the material plane, but instead they come from the First World. We recently were given a story about how the legendary father of the Norms Fafnir took the Norm eggs and escaped to the material plane. But then again, that was a story we only got like a month ago. So we'll leave it at that for now. Which brings us to the discussion of the leaders of the Fae. Not gods, even though that is the position they hold in comparison. No, the gods left the First World behind. The Eldest stand not as objects of worship, but kings who rule their courts. They are the strongest of Fae, their kingdoms forever unshifting, instead kept eternally to their own twisted will. Going into the Eldest, I am not going to do so today. Honestly, the 9 we have currently could be their own video realistically. Plus, we're still a few days from Galactic Magic, with the Eldest being specifically listed as a minor deity collective in past Starfinder books. However, I can give you a taste of just how varied these 9 that we actually have are. So, they include some who live multiple lives out of order. We have ones who might be from another plane. We have ones who might be living constructs. We have those who might be dead and gone, but who still give their followers powers. We have the greatest of Norns, the greatest prankster, and of course the originator of all the norms. And those are just our main ones. Or main on Galarian. Again, territories, while changing, do tend to keep consistent with planets. Again, really looking forward to Galactic Magic. However, there are a few minor Eldest I can list, so I am not just completely leaving you out in the cold. First, on the topic of other planets, Enkar the Sign is an Eldest who makes it his point of traveling between the planet's territories, delivering messages across them in his own territory, the World Ship. Best chance, in my opinion, of actually appearing in Galactic Magic. I'm going to be done talking about Galactic Magic, but fingers crossed. Another Eldest I briefly mentioned before when I did my Saturday video is Apheline the Flame, who became obsessed with the sun until, well, the last words heard from her were, "I am close now, but to truly understand, I must dwell within her glory." So yeah, she's probably not coming back. Going from different planets to different planes, Roswin, the Fell Night Queen, tried to combine the power of the First World and the Shadow Plane, and was imprisoned in a demi-plane prison called the Fellite Realm. Finally, Oleran the Cancer is eldest of one-way growth, and therefore must keep moving, lest another incident like Great Consumption happen again. We don't get information what the Great Consumption is yet, but one day. However, there is one more I can mention, but let's do so as a side tangent. This is the part of the show where I work to spread information across various planes. Today, we have another Eldest, technically. Baba Yaga, the Queen of Witches. Specifically the Pathfinder incarnation of her, as opposed to the legendary Russian witch which she is based off of. Well, I say that, but they are actually the same person. You see, Baba Yaga is from Earth, all Earth, being from a pre-Russian tribe of Sarmatians from around 75 BC by our calendar. One day she stumbled across a Norn who, when she saw the length and luster of the woman's fate, decided to teach her magic. Over time, she grew in strength, to where she became the greatest witch in the universe, and one of its greatest arcane casters. Then, using her powers, she began establishing territories across planets and planes, slowly building herself frozen kingdoms connected only through her famous dancing hut. When it comes to Pathfinder, two of these territories stand out above all others. The nation of Irison, ruled by the Yardwiga who share her blood, and the thrice 10th kingdom in the First World, her possession of the land and her immense power, making her qualified to count as an eldest. Of course, she chooses not to let others rule in her place instead of taking the time to do so herself, but she still could probably hold the territories herself, even against other eldest, if the need actually ever arose. Getting back on our main topic, next up, let's look at some of the many interesting places within the First World. This will be a long section, and, as I mentioned earlier, since it's made up of bits of Patrick information, it's going to be a mess. But it is a guide to the First World. There's no clean way this was going to happen, so kind of rambly section starting now. First, non-town geological features. Or geographical, whichever one you want to use. Geographical is probably better. Non-town geographical features. You want to go somewhere fast? The plane of doors can get one anywhere in the First World. You want to know where you're going? You probably don't want to travel through the plane of doors. The Canyon of Faces is a canyon filled with limitless numbers of stone heads, as the name implies. It is said that the face of everyone who has ever lived can be found within, and that finding your own is either extremely good or extremely bad luck. The Bligh Lands are the dark lands of the First World, with civilization being scattered between lurking monsters, just like on our side. This is a place where you can find Pecks, Mites, Vega Pygmies, and of course the field redcaps, in a natural territory. Of course, if Darklands exists, dungeons exist everywhere, even since the beginning. The Riddled Spear is a three-dimensional, ever-changing dungeon, said to have formed naturally around a powerful artifact. While strange combinations and changes are part of the First World, the quickening causes anyone who comes in a certain area to evolve at an unstable rate. The reason for this is unknown. The Cimarron was once a forest tended by three Fae sisters who were renowned for their wisdom far far and wide. However, now the forest is but cinders, and the three sisters are the first anise, green, and sea hags. The spindlewood is home to leafless trees and the mysterious thin men. It is said that the first center is home to a woman called Weeping Jess, cursed to forever be trapped in the impossible choice of saving either her lover or her sister. The high mountains of Yarrow Waste are said to have once been home to Cormog, a dead Eldest. Even today its followers, the Igirogs, creatures said to share his face, haunt the wastelands to keep away outsiders. Finally, for this section at least, Wild Garden is a place for those who are against the ideas of towns or modern convenience. Home to groups of dryads led by Johanna the Elking, this fortress of trees is home to many eco-terrorist plots. Now, let's look at some actual towns or population centers, which, starting off, let's see many that you would expect to find in the world of the Fae. Cliffside House is built on the edge of Volcano Sinkhole, and is a favorite vacation spot for Fae. Here, not only can you find feasts and, well, it's YouTube, so we'll call it companionship here, but also chances to bathe in dreams or have music tattooed to one's body. Hallowed Hall is a stump of what must have been one of the largest trees ever to exist. This is home to the satyrs, this land being in a perpetual state of party. They're satyrs. Elsewhere, the tree Usu is said to be one of the oldest trees in the First World. Salona, the city and its branches, is one of the largest exporters of amber, and many of the buildings are made of resin harvested from the tree. A third interesting village of trees, Fae's Tree, is a village built around a tree which disappears each night. It usually reappears with strange markings and sometimes strange monsters. Gorminghome is a town built in a volcano. That's it. The three islands that make up Trilith are home to one of the greatest trading empires in the First World. It was originally founded by the Ikik. I'm not going to be able to pronounce that since I don't speak Dolphin. Fae, which are psychic dolphins. Zellumoshi, at first glance, might be mistaken for a peaceful farm community of gnomes. However, it is actually a battleground between gremlins working to sabotage the village and house spirits trying to stop them. Springton Downs is a series of hilly villages where the residents never go out at night. After all, the Headless King, the original Doula Horn, calls the night mists home. So that is a long list so far, and we still have a bit to go. Let's say we take a break to break this up with another side tangent. Today's number 2, we have Doula Horn. Doula Horn are headless riders from Irish mythology, believed to be a being that brings death. Rich Irish Fae, not exactly a unique power. Either way, they ride a black horse, sometimes also headless, pulled along with them pulling along a funeral cart. They also sometimes have a whip made out of human spines. Nice. Their activities can just be limited to calling out a person's name to call their soul, or notifying them beforehand by splashing blood upon their doorway. Well, at least they're polite enough to RSVP. It should be noted, however, that the famed Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow has nothing to do with Doula Horns. There was an entirely separate pedigree of headless riders from German folklore, and Russian Irving short stories were done to adapt legends from German. The main difference is, again, the Doula Horn does have a head, which it carries, with the mouth grinning from ear to ear and the eyes darting every direction, able to see everything, even in the darkest of nights. That said, the one thing one can expect from the first world is that it is unexpected. Here are a few places which do not quite line up with the traditional idea of Fae. Starting with Emergence, which is a town of one of the most unusual creatures of nature, machines and constructs. The city runs on chaos the inhabitants declare is fully rational. Thinker's Promise is the capital of the beetle-like Bullabars. Here they continuously advance technological research. A city which trades in knowledge. Anyway, with the grounds of the first world being so dangerous, it is not surprising that some have taken to flying homes. Some in the village of Skyhome had taken pride that none of their families have touched the ground for 12 generations. Of course, even the Fae do not always like change. This is why the city of Stasi, made specifically to never shift or change, exists. It also contains the strongest vault not to belong to Abadar. The Moon Ladder is a gnome-made structure made by their attempts to build a bridge to one of the first world's moons. Well, it was, until recently when they made the decision to make a large percentage of the structure off limits for no given explanation. Can't wait to see what mess that is. And, speaking of mess, unfortunately pollution exists everywhere, even in the first world. A gnome factory city caused the Saltblood Moor, once a fertile shoreline, to become a toxic land filled with warped animals and, of course, knuckleaves. A monster which, just so happens, to be our third side tangent. Knuckleaves are Fae from Scottish folklore, specifically around the Orkney Island chain in the north. There are different descriptions of the creature, whether simply a man riding a horse, or the more famous centaur appearance. However, the one constant is that the creature is skinless and gory, with all the features being disproportional. They are beings of consequences of pollution. Well, the fact that they are is a Pathfinder invention, though the real-life equivalent's mission to terrorize the islands with death and plague might come from the inhabitants' producing of soda ash from seaweed. We may never know. Regardless, the one way you can escape the unstoppable rampage of knuckleaves is the fact that they cannot cross running water. That said, as creatures of the sea, there is a way around almost every stream if one is patient enough. Now let's finish up with a few more interesting sights. Moorbrook is a city co-created by humans and various kinds of sprites. The laws of the city are so confusing it's easy to break a law without realizing it, and then be sentenced to an equally nonsensical punishment. The Chittering Tabernacle is one of the premier hospitals in the First World, which is run by the also known as Norse spiders, which is easier to pronounce since it has syllables in it. They also take a little blood with every treatment, just to check that if you are the Messiah they have been waiting for centuries for. They are really good at the job, though. The Endless Siege is an ugly castle owned by a group of Verdavans, armored Fae obsessed with war. The purpose of these endless armies is not to take the castle, but the Bell to do so itself. While most of the First World holds a grudge against the gods who abandoned them, Palantir is the place in the first world for worship outside those of the Eldest. God's Arm is a city built around the corpse of a dead god, with the gnome residents happily harvesting natural resources from the body. Vestige is a town obsessed with the idea of mortality beyond fate kind. They take turns performing mock funerals, sometimes even going to the point where they bury themselves alive. And how can I not talk about the esteemed Academy of Kobislani, the esteemed Academy of Kobislani, named after the famed patron who founded it. Upon his back. It is on the back of a giant sentient elephant. This brings us to the end, but we have one more side tangent I have not used yet. There are many Fae I could talk about at this point, but I'm going to go with my favorite, and one of the most powerful. Our fourth side tangent, the Wild Hunt. The Wild Hunt is a trans-European myth of hunters who either chase down phantasmal prey or hunt down escapees from that culture's underworld. While it's most famously connected to Odin, leaders include other folk heroes including Theodoric the Great and King Arthur, as well as biblical figures like Cain or the devil himself. Riders include ghosts, fae, dogs, elves, valkyries, among various other creatures. However, it's not just mainland European, but it has connections all the way to India, and similar legends have been found in Japan's Parade of 1,000 Demons and the Polynesian Night Marches. It is also the inspiration for the Ghost Riders, an American legend that started in the 19th century, and has been adapted to song form and, of course, comic book form. In terms of Pathfinder, the Wild Hunt is a species made of 5 subspecies: hounds, horses, archers, scouts, and monarchs. When we get these as a playable race like ancestry like the automatons. They can travel separately, but together a hunt is a force to be reckoned with, leading some to question if they should be classified as a Tane. The super weapons of the Eldest, which include bandersnatches and jabberwocks. I went through what they were briefly when I did the Plains video. So that does leave the question, if they do qualify as a Tane, then they must be connected to the Eldest, correct? Well, all hunters, even the monarchs themselves, serve an unknown figure called the Horned Lord, who is said to call them together to fight legendary foes whenever the opportunity is needed. However, none are known to have actually met this king, and therefore they have not been able to confirm what his status actually is. And that is it for today. I have been wanting to dive into the First World and Fae for a while, and I'm glad I finally was able to do so. Probably will not do the Eldest video I talked about earlier until I have gone through the big names, but a collective of the individual Eldest does sound like a good idea. Just a next year good idea. For now, we are going from somewhere green to somewhere much less so for next week's video. Hope to see you all there.